I spent my whole life building my daughter's future. But the night I overheard her telling a stranger, "Once the papers are signed, the house will be mine," something inside me shattered. I never imagined that the daughter I sacrificed everything for would be the same daughter who left me broken and homeless today. My name is Margaret Jackson, and I am 74 years old. I have spent nearly my entire life in this old house in Greensboro, North Carolina. Every corner of it holds memories of my husband, every window carries the echoes of my daughter's childhood, and every step reminds me of the years I fought alone to keep this home standing. I never imagined that the child I raised with my own hands would one day try to take it away from me. The night everything changed, I wasn't doing anything unusual. I had just finished folding a fresh load of laundry and was carrying the towels upstairs. My knees had been aching all afternoon, but pain is something you learn to live with when you've spent decades working double shifts and putting your child before yourself. The house was quiet, too quiet, and the soft hum of the heater was the only sound filling the hallway. As I stepped onto the stairs, my foot slipped on the smooth wood. In a single breath, the world tilted. I lost my balance, fell hard, and felt a stabbing pain explode through my ribs. The impact knocked the air out of me, and before I knew it, I was lying sideways on the cold steps, unable to move. I tried to call for help, but my voice cracked and dissolved into silence. My phone had flown out of my hand and slid under the hallway table, completely out of reach. The house felt impossibly large in that moment, as if every room was turning its back on me. The ticking of the clock grew louder, echoing through the stillness like a reminder that time was moving forward, while I remained helpless on the floor. I don't know how long I stayed there. Minutes felt like hours. Pain wrapped around my body like iron chains, pulling me deeper into fear. A terrifying thought drifted into my mind. What if no one comes? What if this is how it ends? And then, the front door opened. At first, I felt a wave of relief. Footsteps echoed across the wooden floor, heels clicking, confident, sharp. The scent of expensive perfume drifted in the air. My daughter, Brielle. The child I had worked day and night to raise. The woman whose entire future had been built on the sacrifices I made. But something felt wrong. She didn't call out my name. She didn't ask if I was home. She walked slowly, almost deliberately, as if she already knew exactly where to find me. When she turned the corner and saw me lying on the stairs, she froze, but not with shock. Not with worry. Her eyes moved over me the way a realtor examines a property. Calculating, silent, emotionless. "Mom, what happened?" she finally said, but her voice carried no fear, no urgency, no motherly instinct. Just annoyance. Just inconvenience. She didn't rush toward me. She didn't kneel to help. She stood there for a moment, her eyes drifting around the living room, scanning the walls, the furniture, and the familiar spaces of the home. Almost like she was imagining what the house would look like without me in it. That was the moment something inside me shifted. She eventually stepped closer and placed her hand lightly on my shoulder, so lightly I could barely feel it. As she guided me to the couch, something unsettling flickered across her face. A coldness I hadn't seen since her teenage years, when she believed the world existed only for her. She sat beside me, but instead of asking how I felt or if I needed a doctor, her first question was, "Do you have your house papers somewhere accessible, Mom? I need to check something." Even through the pain, my heart dropped. Why would she ask that? Why now? Why when I was at my weakest? I told myself I was imagining things. That pain was making me paranoid. That no daughter would ever look at her mother the way she was looking at me. But deep down, I knew something dark had been growing inside her. Something I had ignored for years. I didn't know then what she had already done. I didn't know the lies she had told. I didn't know the documents she had forged behind my back. And I didn't know that someone else, someone unexpected, was quietly witnessing the beginning of her betrayal. All I knew was that the fall that night had broken more than my bones. It had cracked open a truth I had been too afraid to see. When Brielle left that night after helping me onto the couch, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and listening to the quiet breathing of the house. Pain pulsed through my ribs, but the ache in my chest came from a different place. Something about the way she looked at me, like I was an obstacle, not her mother, kept replaying in my mind. For most of her life, I had believed that the best thing I ever did was raising her. And for a long time, it felt true. She was smart, ambitious, and determined to rise above the circumstances I had worked so hard to shield her from. I wanted her to have more than I ever had. I wanted her to walk into rooms where people respected her name, not pitted her background. And she did. Brielle earned a scholarship to a top university. She graduated with a degree in finance. She landed a high-paying job at a corporate firm in Charlotte. People admired her confidence, her expensive taste, her bold personality. She had a natural charm, one that opened doors and attracted powerful friends. But as she climbed higher, something inside her shifted in a direction I didn't recognize. Success didn't humble her. It consumed her. She rented a luxury apartment she couldn't afford. She bought designer clothes on credit, signed for a car she didn't need, and filled her social media with a life she was barely holding together financially. Her smile in photos was always a little too wide, her captions always a little too perfect. Proof she was living for validation rather than stability. Every time she visited me, she walked around the house with comments like, "Mom, this place would look so much better if it were remodeled. You really should consider selling this and moving somewhere smaller. Do you even use all these rooms anymore?" At the time, I thought it was harmless criticism, just her wanting a modern lifestyle. I didn't know those words were the beginning of a plan forming inside her. A plan that had nothing to do with my comfort, and everything to do with her survival. The truth unfolded slowly, piece by piece, like the peeling of old wallpaper. It began the day I found a letter on my doorstep. A business envelope addressed to Brielle, but accidentally delivered to my house. I wasn't someone who opened personal mail, but when I noticed the sender, a private loan company, my heart dropped. Brielle had never mentioned taking a loan. When she came by later that evening, I gently asked, "Honey, is everything okay with your finances?" Her smile tightened. Her eyes flashed, quick, sharp, defensive. "I'm fine, Mom. Don't concern yourself with adult things." Adult things. It stung more than I expected. That was how she talked to her employees, not her mother. But the truth was, she wasn't fine. I learned months later, far too late, that she had made a series of high-risk investments through an unregulated firm. At first, she made money. Then she got greedy. She invested more. And more. And when the market dipped, everything collapsed. Her accounts drained. Her credit cards maxed out. Her car payment bounced. Debt collectors started calling her office. And in her panic, she had taken a private loan so large that even her salary couldn't handle it. She was drowning silently, and instead of reaching for me, she reached for my house. One night, after she believed I had fallen asleep, I heard her talking on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low, rushed, breathless. "I told you, once the paperwork goes through, I'll have access to the property. Yes, my mother can't manage things anymore. The house is practically mine already." I remember gripping the blanket with trembling hands. My heart pounded against my ribs. She spoke as if I were a burden she needed to move out of the way. As if I were no longer her mother, but a signature blocking her escape. She hung up the phone and walked out the front door. She didn't even check on me. I didn't say anything that night. Fear wrapped around my throat like a cold hand. The next morning, when she came to check on me, she didn't ask how I slept. She didn't make me tea. She didn't even sit beside me. Instead, she stood over me and said, "Mom, where exactly are your medical papers? And where is the deed to the house? I need to look at something." Her tone wasn't a request. It was a command. Sharp, urgent, controlled. I stared at her, searching her face for some piece of the child I once knew. The little girl who used to hold my hand crossing the road, the young woman who used to celebrate her accomplishments with me first, the daughter I sacrificed every dream for. But all I saw was panic, desperation, and greed standing tall behind her eyes. It was in that moment, a simple, horrifying moment, that I realized the truth. Brielle wasn't planning to help me recover. She was planning to remove me, not from danger, but from my own home. And worse, she had already taken steps I didn't even know about. I didn't understand everything yet, but I could feel the ground shifting under me. The betrayal had already begun. The days after my fall felt like walking through fog. My ribs were sore, my legs stiff, and my breath shallow. Every small movement sent a burning ache through my side, reminding me that I wasn't the woman I used to be. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest, the heaviness that came from finally seeing what I had refused to believe for so long. Brielle was changing into someone I no longer recognized. She came to the house every day after my accident, but not with warm meals, comfort, or care. Instead, she arrived like an employee on a mission, always rushed, always strict, always carrying a bag full of paperwork that she tried to place in front of me. "Mom, you need to sign a few things," she would say, flipping pages quickly, avoiding my eyes. "What are these?" I asked the first time. "Just routine medical authorizations," she replied too quickly. Her voice didn't rise. But it didn't soften either. It was cold. Efficient. Practiced. Something was wrong. The signatures she needed were always for things she refused to explain. The pages always turned too fast. And she always tried to position them in a way that hid the details from me. The fourth day after my fall, she brought a set of documents thicker than a phone book. "Mom, it's just legal care coordination. You need this to keep yourself safe." Safe. A word she used often now. But every time she said it, I felt less safe. I pushed the papers away. My hands trembled, not from age, but from the fear that something terrible was unfolding right in front of me. "Brielle, why are there so many forms?" I asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. "Because, Mom," she said, "you can't manage things alone anymore." The words hit harder than my fall. I had spent a lifetime managing things alone. Working 2 jobs. Paying bills. Maintaining this home. Raising her. Feeding her. Surviving life's storms while she slept peacefully in the next room. But now she looked at me like I was fragile glass she was preparing to sweep out of the way. 2 days later, while she thought I was asleep in the living room, I heard her voice in the kitchen again. It wasn't the panicked voice I heard before. It was calculating now, more confident. "Yeah. The assessment request is submitted," she whispered sharply. "They'll declare her unfit. Then everything moves forward." Unfit? My heart stopped. I said it already. I handled the signatures. Once the report comes through, the house becomes accessible to the lender. Accessible to the lender. Those words felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. She wasn't just planning to take my house. She had already put it at risk. Already involved outsiders. Already crossed legal lines. I clutched the blanket around me and tried to steady my breathing. I needed to understand, truly understand, what she had done. The next morning, when she left for work, I slowly forced myself up and searched the living room for the papers she kept trying to hide. They weren't hard to find. She must have believed I was too weak or too naive to look. When I opened her folder, My hands went weak. Inside were a medical incapacity forms, with my shaky signature forged at the bottom. Not perfectly copied, but close enough to fool someone who didn't know me. A guardianship request letters, stating I was mentally declining and unable to make independent decisions. A property transfer drafts, half-completed forms listing my home as potential collateral. And worst of all, a loan agreement with my home mentioned in fine print. My breath caught in my throat. She had used my name, my identity, my home, without my knowledge, without my permission. The daughter I raised, the daughter I sacrificed my entire youth for, the daughter whose success I built with my own hands, had signed away my life. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I sat there for a long time, holding the documents that proved my greatest fear true. The house I built, the memories I lived, the walls that held my entire life, were in danger not because of time, not because of illness, not because of strangers, but because of my own child. That evening, Brielle walked in with the same bright confidence she always carried. She placed her purse on the table, adjusted her expensive coat, and smiled like she had everything under control. I looked at her differently now. I didn't speak. She didn't know what I had seen. Her greeting was casual. "Mom, did you rest?" But her eyes were sharp, focused, watching me too closely, as if she suspected something, as if she knew her window of time was shrinking. I forced a small nod, pretending nothing was wrong, pretending my heart wasn't breaking inside my chest, pretending I hadn't seen the evidence of her betrayal. Because I didn't have enough strength to fight her, not alone. Not yet. And thanks to the forged documents, the medical lies, and the guardianship forms, I was running out of time. But what Brielle didn't know was that her plan had already triggered something she didn't expect. A red flag in the state system. A red flag that would soon reach the one person capable of stopping her. And that person was on her way. For days, I lived in a quiet storm, pretending, smiling, agreeing, while every hour felt like another thread in the rope Brielle was tightening around my neck. I couldn't confront her. I couldn't stop her. I couldn't even trust my own body to stand upright without pain shooting through my ribs. But what Brielle didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that her forged paperwork, her lies, and her calculated statements had triggered something she never anticipated. A mandatory state verification review. And the moment the system flagged inconsistencies in her request for guardianship and elder mental incapacity, the paperwork landed on a desk that changed everything. A desk belonging to Dr. Vanessa Brown. Vanessa and I had worked together decades ago in community crisis counseling. She was sharp, brilliant, and stubborn in all the right ways. We hadn't seen each other in years, but life has a strange way of bringing people back when you need them the most. She later told me the moment she saw my name on the flagged file, her stomach tightened. Something felt wrong. The report Brielle submitted described me as confused, forgetful, unstable, unable to identify familiar people, incapable of making decisions, a woman barely aware of her surroundings. But Vanessa knew me. She knew what I used to be, and she knew how lies look on paper. She read the forms again. Then again. Then she looked at the attached signatures. One was a clean copy. One was shaky. One was inconsistent. One was too perfect. Her training kicked in. Her instincts woke up. Something was off. She called the number listed as emergency family contact, Brielle's. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. So she called the next number listed as secondary contact. It wasn't Brielle's. It wasn't a relative. It was my old landline number. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if the line even worked anymore. But she dialed anyway. It rang twice, then connected. My voice was weak from the fall, thin with exhaustion, but still recognizable. "Hello." There was a long silence on the other end. Then a soft, shocked whisper. "Margaret? Is that really you?" The sound of her voice felt like someone opening a window in a suffocating room. "Vanessa? Oh my God. Vanessa, is that really you?" Her next words changed the course of my life. "Margaret, I received a report saying you're mentally declining. The forms say you don't recognize familiar faces. That you can't manage your own home. Are you all right?" My heart stung. My throat tightened. I didn't know where to begin, where to breathe, how to hide the shame, the hurt, the disbelief. Tears blurred my vision, and my voice cracked as I forced the truth out. "No, Vanessa. None of that is true. My daughter forged everything." I expected her to gasp, to doubt me, to freeze. But she didn't. Her voice became calm, steady, focused, the voice of a woman stepping into battle. "Margaret, listen to me," she said. "I'm flying to Greensboro tomorrow. Don't sign anything. Don't hand over any documents. And don't let Brielle know anything has changed." My hand trembled as I held the phone. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "Oh, I'm absolutely sure," she replied. "Because if what you're telling me is true, your daughter is committing a federal crime." My breath stopped. Not because I doubted her, but because hearing it out loud, hearing someone else give shape to the nightmare I was living, made it real. For the first time in weeks, a spark of strength flickered inside me. Someone believed me. Someone was coming. Someone who could stop Brielle before she erased me completely. The next afternoon, I saw a familiar car pull into my driveway. Vanessa stepped out, a little older, a little grayer, but still carrying the same fierce energy I remembered. When she entered the house and saw the bruises on my arm from the fall, her eyes hardened with fury. "What did she do, Margaret?" she asked softly, her hands trembling with anger she was trying to contain. I told her everything. Every whisper. Every forged signature. Every lie. She listened without interrupting, her jaw tightening with each new detail. When I finished, she closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and said, "Then we start fighting back today." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't panic. She didn't rush. She simply sat beside me and began building a silent war. A war Brielle didn't know she had already lost. That evening, when Brielle arrived and saw Vanessa sitting in the living room, her eyes widened in shock, and then narrowed in suspicion. "Mom, why is she here?" she asked sharply. Vanessa didn't blink. "I'm here to complete your mother's mental assessment," she said calmly. "The one you requested." Brielle froze. For the first time since my fall, I saw fear in her eyes. Not guilt. Not sorrow. Not love. Fear. Because she had just realized something. Her lies were no longer safe. Her plan was no longer hidden. And her secret was no longer hers alone. The quiet war had begun. The moment Vanessa announced she was there to conduct my official mental assessment, the air in the room shifted. It felt as if the house itself inhaled sharply, waiting to see what would happen next. Brielle's smile tightened, the way it always did when things slipped out of her control. "Oh, that wasn't necessary," she said quickly, placing her purse on the table. "I already took care of that with the clinic. It's all handled." Vanessa's eyebrows lifted slightly, calm but piercing, like a surgeon preparing for delicate work. "Well, according to the state system," she replied, "there were inconsistencies in the documentation. So now it's my responsibility." I saw it, the flicker of panic behind Brielle's eyes. A tiny crack in her confidence. A moment of truth struggling to surface. She tried to laugh, but it came out thin. Almost brittle. Well, sure. If it's required, I guess. Vanessa held her gaze. It is. Brielle swallowed. And that was when I realized. For the first time, my daughter wasn't steering the situation. She was being pulled into it. When Brielle left the room to take a phone call, Vanessa sat beside me and lowered her voice. She's nervous, she whispered. Good. The more pressure she feels, the more mistakes she'll make. I sighed, clutching the blanket across my lap. Vanessa. She's still my child. She placed her hand gently over mine. And you're still alive, Margaret. That matters more. We're going to protect you first, then worry about what she deserves. Her reassurance was steady, fierce, grounding. I hadn't felt this safe in weeks. Once Brielle was gone, Vanessa got to work, not with medicine, not with tests, but with something far more important. She started rebuilding me. Because if Brielle wanted to prove I was mentally unfit, then our first step was proving the opposite, with clarity, strength, and evidence. Vanessa created a plan with the precision of a general preparing for war. A cognitive exercises and memory drills, handwriting practice, signature stabilization sessions, daily mobility therapy, verbal reasoning tests, medication balancing, emotional counseling. Every day, she visited without fail. Sometimes in the morning. Sometimes late at night after her shift. Sometimes during her lunch breaks. She pushed me. But gently. Firmly. Lovingly. You are stronger than what she thinks, she reminded me. And we're going to show her. There were moments I wanted to give up. Moments when pain shot through my side, or when my handwriting trembled, or when memories blurred together from exhaustion. But Vanessa never let me fall. She stood in the kitchen doorway each day like a soldier guarding a fortress. You survived years of double shifts, Margaret, she would say. You raised a daughter by yourself. You think a fall or a signature is going to defeat you now. Get up. We're not done. Meanwhile, Brielle was spiraling. She thought her plan was simple. Forge my decline. Gain guardianship. Sell the house. Pay off her debt. Walk away clean. But Vanessa's sudden appearance threw a wrench straight through the heart of her scheme. And she knew it. Her visits became shorter. Her tone became sharper. Her patience thinner. She started snapping at me over small things. Why are you walking alone? Why is the house disorganized? Why are you talking to Vanessa so much? Every question carried suspicion. Every word carried pressure. And behind that pressure, I saw fear. Real fear. Because Vanessa's presence meant Brielle's lies weren't just unraveling, they were being documented. Recorded. Analyzed. Filed. Preserved. Evidence against her was forming quietly, piece by piece, while she thought she still had the power. One evening, after Vanessa left, Brielle stood in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed. Mom, she said sharply, I need to check your mail and your documents soon. There's paperwork that's overdue. Her voice wasn't a daughter's voice. It was a collector's voice. A planner's voice. A thief's voice rehearsing control. Why do you need my documents? I asked softly. She didn't blink. Because, in case you've forgotten, you're not able to manage these things anymore. For a moment, my blood froze. She still believed she would win. She still believed she could erase Vanessa's involvement. She still believed she could silence me. But she didn't know what Vanessa told me earlier. Margaret, the state has officially assigned me as your evaluator. Your daughter can't change that now. No matter what she does. It was the first time I felt the upper hand shifting. For the first time, the fear began moving away from me, and settling onto Brielle. She didn't know she was being watched. She didn't know her lies had been exposed. She didn't know her forged documents had been flagged. And she certainly didn't know that the fight she started was no longer hers to control. Over the next few days, something unexpected happened. I started getting stronger again. Not just physically, not just mentally, but in a deeper way, a way I didn't know I still had inside me. The more Brielle tightened her grip, the more Vanessa strengthened my foundation. I wasn't the helpless woman lying on the stairs anymore. I was preparing, slowly, quietly, for the day Brielle would be forced to face what she had done. And that day was coming faster than she thought. As the weeks passed, Vanessa and I kept our quiet routine. Every morning she came with a notebook in one hand and determination in the other. She tested my memory, my decision-making, my reasoning, and my strength. She pushed me to walk, to think clearly, and to reclaim every piece of control Brielle had tried to take. We were rebuilding me brick by brick. But while we were building, Brielle was unraveling. Her desperation was no longer subtle. It clung to her like a cold shadow. She paced the house more, gave sharper answers, and snapped at the smallest things. She no longer hid her frustration when she saw Vanessa's car in the driveway. And then came the day she made her boldest, most dangerous move yet. It was a Thursday morning when Brielle arrived earlier than usual. She barged in without knocking, her hair messy, her eyes swollen, her breathing uneven. She looked like someone who had spent the night fighting with fear itself. "Mom," she said quickly, "I need you to sign something right now." My heart tightened. Her tone was different, panicked, pressured, cornered. I kept my voice calm. "What is it?" "It's just a health authorization. Nothing serious. Just sign it." I extended my hand for the papers, but she didn't give them to me. She held them behind her back. Vanessa's training echoed in my mind. If she hides the papers, they're dangerous. If she rushes you, she's desperate. If she pressures you, she's lying. "Brielle," I said gently, "let me see them." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She shook her head slightly. "Mom, just sign. Please. You don't need to read it." My stomach dropped. No mother wants to believe her child is capable of something monstrous. But in that moment, I knew. She wanted to trap me. I reached out my hand again. "Show me." She hesitated, and in that split second her mask slipped. Fear, greed, panic, all flickered across her face. Then she snapped. "Oh my God, Mom. Why do you have to question everything? You need help. That's what this says." Her voice cracked, not from concern, but from frustration. As she spoke, the papers slipped slightly from her grip. And I saw it. The header. The bold letters. "Petition for emergency guardianship." My breath stopped. This wasn't a health authorization. This wasn't simple paperwork. This was the form that would legally strip me of every right I had: my home, my finances, my decisions, my independence. Emergency guardianship meant she could take everything immediately, without a hearing, without my consent, without my voice. I felt the room tilt. Not from my age. Not from weakness. From the horrifying realization of how far she was willing to go. I whispered, "Brielle, why would you do this?" She broke. "Because I have no choice," she screamed, the papers shaking in her hands. "You don't understand what I'm dealing with. I'm drowning. I need something, anything, to pull me out." Her voice trembled, and for a split moment, I saw the little girl she used to be. Lost. Terrified. Desperate. But desperation doesn't excuse betrayal. Not this kind. Not at this level. She wiped her eyes harshly and straightened the papers. "Mom, just sign." The room went silent. And suddenly, Vanessa's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She's not signing anything. Brielle spun around, startled. Vanessa stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold with a calm fury. How did you get in here? Brielle snapped. You left the front door wide open, Vanessa replied. Probably because you were too focused on forcing your mother to give up her life. The silence between them was heavy, venomous, dark, electric. Brielle's voice trembled. This is none of your business. Vanessa stepped closer, her tone steady and controlled. You forged state documents. You lied about her mental health. You attempted to assign her home as collateral for an illegal loan. And now you're trying to force emergency guardianship. She shook her head slowly. It became my business the moment you tried to erase her. Brielle backed up a step, clutching the papers to her chest like a shield. You can't prove anything. Vanessa gave a cold, humorless smile. I already have. Brielle went completely still. Vanessa continued, her voice low but sharp as steel. The state has been reviewing your documents. They flagged your signatures as inconsistent. A financial investigator has already raised concerns about property misuse. And the medical board has confirmed your claims do not match any legitimate physician records. Brielle's face crumbled. Her confidence broke. Her lies cracked open. Her scheme began collapsing right in front of her. Then Vanessa delivered the final blow. There will be a formal evaluation. Not controlled by you. Not falsified by you. Not influenced by you. She looked Brielle dead in the eyes. And if you try one more time to force your mother into signing anything, the next person knocking on your door will not be me. It'll be law enforcement. Brielle's knees weakened. She stumbled back. The papers slipped from her hands and scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. She stared at them, the proofs of her betrayal, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw her realize she was losing. Not because of me, but because of the woman standing beside me. Dr. Vanessa Brown. My friend. My ally. My shield. The quiet war wasn't quiet anymore. The lines were drawn. The truth was surfacing. The end was approaching. And Brielle was running out of time. The morning of the official assessment felt heavier than any storm I had ever weathered. The air was thick, the light dull, and every breath I took felt like a reminder that this day, this exact day, would decide whether I kept my life or lost it. Vanessa had been preparing me for weeks. Daily memory drills. Writing exercises. Mobility routines. Reasoning tests. Confidence training. Every step I took, every sentence I practiced, every signature I stabilized, all led to this moment. I was ready. But Brielle was not. At exactly 9 a.m., a black state-issued sedan pulled into my driveway. The engine stopped. The door opened. A man stepped out holding a brown assessment folder with the state seal on it. Mr. Dalton, the official elder care investigator. Behind him, another car arrived, Vanessa's. She stepped out calm and composed, a folder tucked under her arm. And then, a third car pulled in. Brielle. She rushed out, heels clicking on the pavement, her face painted with panic she could no longer hide. She smoothed her hair, fixed her blazer, and forced a smile that cracked at the edges. Good morning, she said brightly, but her voice shook. No one responded. Mr. Dalton nodded politely and stepped inside first. Vanessa followed. I sat in my armchair, my hands folded neatly, my breathing steady. But Brielle. She hovered in the doorway like a shadow, uncertain, restless, afraid. When everyone was seated, Mr. Dalton opened his folder. Mrs. Jackson, he began, we are here today to conduct a full competency assessment. I want to assure you that this process is fair, neutral, and entirely about your well-being. I nodded. I understand. He turned to Vanessa. Dr. Brown, as the assigned evaluator, you may begin whenever you're ready. Brielle's eyes widened. She wasn't expecting that. You? She whispered at Vanessa. You're the evaluator? Vanessa didn't look at her. Yes, she replied calmly. I was assigned after your previous submission raised several inconsistencies. Brielle's face dropped. The assessment began. Mr. Dalton asked simple questions first. What day is it? What city do you live in? What medications are you currently taking? Who is the current governor? When is your next doctor's appointment? I answered each one clearly, confidently, with no hesitation. I saw the shock flicker across Brielle's face. She expected me to fail. She expected me to crumble. She expected me to fall apart in front of strangers. Instead, I stood stronger than I had in months. Then Vanessa moved to the second portion. Reasoning tests. Decision-making simulations. Financial understanding questions. Mrs. Jackson, she asked gently, if you were given two medical options, one risky, one safe, how would you decide which to choose? I would ask questions, compare outcomes, and choose the safest path, I replied. And if someone pressured you to sign something without explanations? I would refuse. Brielle's breath caught. She looked like she'd been slapped. Finally, Vanessa brought out the third portion of the assessment. The handwriting and signature test. Mrs. Jackson, she said, handing me a form, could you please sign your full legal name here? My hand was steady. My lettering clean. My signature consistent. Then Vanessa opened another folder and placed a set of forged signatures right next to mine. The room went silent. The difference was undeniable. Even Brielle took a step back. Mr. Dalton leaned forward, studying them closely. These signatures, he said slowly, are not the same. Vanessa nodded. I agree. She then placed the forged guardianship forms onto the table. Well then, Vanessa continued, let's discuss how Mrs. Jackson's signature ended up on documents she never saw. Brielle's knees wobbled. Wait, she stammered. I was just trying to help. She wasn't thinking clearly. Mr. Dalton raised his hand sharply. Miss Jackson, please sit. She sat, but her breathing grew uneven. Fear had caught her by the throat. Vanessa pulled out the final piece. Mr. Dalton, she said, sliding the loan agreement forward, these documents show that Miss Jackson attempted to use her mother's home as collateral for a private loan. Without consent. Brielle froze. Her entire facade shattered. No, that's not true. She said I could, Mom, tell them you agreed. Tell them. Her voice broke, desperate, frantic. I looked at her, this woman I gave my life to, who used me, lied to me, tried to erase me, and for a moment, sorrow washed over me like a tide. I never agreed, I whispered. Her face drained of color. Mom, please. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not from guilt, but from the realization that her world was collapsing. Mr. Dalton closed his folder. Dr. Brown, he said firmly, based on this evaluation, do you believe Mrs. Jackson is mentally competent? Vanessa stood tall. I am confident, she said, her voice strong, that Margaret Jackson is fully competent, mentally sound, and capable of managing her own life. Brielle gasped. No, please don't. But it was too late. Mr. Dalton delivered the verdict with finality. Emergency guardianship is denied. A fraud investigation will be opened immediately. All property documents will be frozen for review. Brielle collapsed into the chair behind her, sobbing into her hands. Her entire plan, every lie, every forged signature, every hidden intention, had just fallen apart in front of her. and the daughter who believed she could steal my life with a pen had finally been exposed. But the story wasn't over. Because the next moment, Brielle would break in a way I had never seen before. The truth was about to hit her harder than anything she had planned for me. For a long moment after Mr. Dalton announced his decision, the room was frozen. No one moved. No one breathed. Brielle sat hunched in the armchair across from me, her hands trembling violently, her eyes wide with the horror of a woman watching her entire life fall apart in slow motion. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her perfectly ironed blazer wrinkled as she tried to hold herself upright. Her breath came in broken, uneven gasps. She wasn't the powerful executive anymore. She wasn't the polished professional with designer handbags and expensive shoes. She was just a scared child. One who finally realized what she had done. Mr. Dalton stood, gathering his paperwork. "I'll be filing my report by this afternoon," he said firmly. "A fraud case may take several weeks, but based on the evidence presented today, the outcome is clear." He looked once at Brielle. "You should find legal counsel, Ms. Jackson." She flinched like the words were blows. Then he turned to me, offering a respectful nod. "Mrs. Jackson, if you need anything at all, you contact me directly. You've handled yourself with dignity." With that, he left. The front door clicked shut. Only 3 of us remained in the silent room, me, Vanessa, and the daughter who had tried to ruin me. Brielle's breakdown began quietly. First a strangled breath. Then a shiver. Then her hands rose to her face as she whispered, "Mom, what have I done?" Her voice cracked open. Her shoulders collapsed inward. The weight of her choices finally suffocated her pride. "You trusted me," she sobbed. "And I betrayed you. I lied. I forged your name. I tried to take your home, Mom, your life, everything you built." Her words tumbled out faster, panicked, desperate. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear I didn't. Mom, I was drowning. Everything was falling apart and I didn't know what to do." She lifted her head, her face wet, broken, pleading. "I'm sorry, Mama." Mama. A word she hadn't used since she was a little girl. My heart clenched. Not from weakness, but from the painful truth that love and betrayal often lived in the same breath. Vanessa remained silent, leaning against the wall, watching, witnessing, giving me space. She didn't interfere. She didn't comfort Brielle. She didn't defend me. She simply understood. This moment was mine. This reckoning belonged to us alone. I looked at Brielle, not the polished professional, not the scheming daughter, not the woman blinded by greed. Just my child. A child who had lost herself in the world's noise. A child who had forgotten where she came from. A child who desperately wanted success, but didn't realize the cost she was creating. I spoke quietly. "Brielle, I gave you everything I had. My time. My money. My strength. My future. I worked nights, weekends, holidays, all so you could stand where you stand today." She cried harder. "I never wanted to be your burden," I said. "I wanted to be your mother." Her fingers dug into her hair as she shook her head. "I know," she whispered. "I know, Mama. I'm so ashamed. Her voice broke completely. "I ruined everything." I didn't reach out to her. Not yet. Because love didn't erase consequences. "You didn't ruin everything," I said softly. "You ruined yourself. And now you will rebuild yourself, without stepping on me ever again." Her breath hitched. "You'll cooperate with the investigation. You'll clean up your debts. You'll stop lying. You'll face what you've done." She nodded through tears. "And if someday you earn back trust, You'll earn it the right way. She cried into her hands, nodding over and over. I will, Mama. I swear I will. Then, and only then, I placed my hand over hers. A small gesture, but enough for her to feel that forgiveness was possible. Someday. Not today. Not yet. But someday. Her shoulders shook as she leaned into my hand, not for protection, but for accountability. Vanessa exhaled softly, her eyes shining with relief. I'll step outside, she said gently. You two need a moment. She walked out into the backyard, leaving me and my daughter alone in the quiet living room, the room where Brielle's entire plan had shattered. After several minutes, Brielle wiped her face, stood up slowly, and spoke in a trembling voice. I'm going to fix this, Mama. I don't know how long it will take, but I'm going to face everything. I'll pay every debt. I'll answer every question. I'll take responsibility. Her chin quivered. And I'll earn my place back in your life. I promise. For the first time in years, her words felt honest. She kissed the back of my hand, whispered I'm sorry one last time, and walked out the door, not as a victorious daughter returning home, but as a woman finally ready to carry the weight of what she'd done. When she left, Vanessa stepped back inside. She didn't ask what happened. Instead, she walked to me, placed a steady hand on my shoulder, and said in a warm, quiet voice, You stood tall today, Margaret. You stood stronger than most people ever could. I smiled, a small, peaceful smile. Thank you, I whispered. For what? She asked. For seeing me. For believing me. For standing by me when my own child didn't. Vanessa squeezed my hand. You're not alone, she said. Not anymore. That evening, the house felt different. Not empty. Not broken. Safe. Mine. For the first time in a long time. I sat in my living room, breathing in the quiet that belonged to me. The night air drifted through the open window. The soft tick of the hallway clock echoed like a heartbeat. And somewhere deep in my chest, peace settled. Not because the storm was over, but because I had survived it. And I had reclaimed my life with my own strength. Not anyone else's.